Hello, everybody. I'm Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders. And let me tell you, we are so blessed today to have a man that if there was a Mount Rushmore of professional football general managers, he would be on it. One of the greatest to ever manage a football team in professional sports, a living legend. The man has gotten two Hall of Fame quarterbacks. He's an expert drafter, one of the best eyes for talent to ever be part of professional football. And our guest, the great Boll Polian. Mr. Polian, thanks again for your time, sir.
Thanks. I don't know what you're talking about there, but I'm glad to be with
you. Well, what an honor. The Raiders went out and got Tom Telesco. And I am going to be brutally honest. When you're a beat writer, you are in the forest on the team that you covered. So to have seen that he was let go, I was a little shocked. But here's what got me about Tom Telesco. Every single person I talked to, executive, player, everyone involved, all told me his word is everything. You don't need a piece of paper when Tom Telesco tells you something. Sharp evaluator of talent. I had people tell me, not Tom, you can't blame him for everything, and because he had bosses and he didn't have final say over contracts. So I get all that. I understand it. And what surprised me was so many people who I respect hold him in such tremendous regard. And one NFL executive told me he's Boll Polian 2.0. If you loved Bill, who was one of the best ever, then you're going to love Tom. You had him with you for years. You molded him. Everything he has done since he got to Las Vegas has been handled perfectly. He's being frugal, but he's not being cheap. He's prioritizing players, his eye for talent. So I want to go back with you, Mr. Polian. What did you see in a young Tom Telesco that you thought, okay, I want this guy by my side?
Well, this goes all the way back to when he was in high school playing with alongside my sons at St. Francis High School in Athol Springs, New York, outside Buffalo. A great high school athlete, great basketball player, great football player, um, and friends obviously and teammates with my sons, and all of them worked as ball boys in training camp with the Bills. And so the more I was around them, the more I realized that this was a young man with lots of talent, lots of integrity, terrific work ethic, very smart, came from a great family. And so when the opportunity arose to take some of these young people from the ball boy role into a new employee type of role. When we got to Carolina, it was a natural, no question about it.
As he went up through the ranks, one of the things, Mr. Polian, that a lot of people have told me about Tom, and now that I've gotten to know him, I agree with them, is he's a great listener. To be a great general manager, how important is that ability to listen? Because people said the same thing about you.
Well, it's very important to be a good listener because as a general manager, you are servicing a number of different people. A, the owner. B, the head coach. C, the coaching staff. D, all of the support people. So you have to listen to what they have to say. You have to listen to their point of view. You have to understand what their job is. And in order to do that, you have to be a good listener. There's much more listening than talking that's involved when it's all said and done.
So when you look at a Tom Telesco, you have been there and built stuff. You've been there and stepped in and rebuilt stuff. You have done it all, Mr. Polian. It's why you're Mount Rushmore GM. What is it stepping into a situation like he has in Las Vegas? What makes, I know you're not specifically, I'm not asking you specifically a Raider question, but what do general managers have to deal stepping into a situation like he has with a coach and everything else? What are some things that are on his radar, sir?
Well, essentially, I just outlined it. First of all, he has to understand what it is the owner wants and how the owner wants the organization to be operated. Because no matter what your title is, when you're the GM, you're the or what your job description is, you are in effect the chief operating officer of the football part of the business. And so you have to understand first and foremost what the owner wants. What does he want the team to look like? How does he want the team to conduct themselves? How does he want the organization to interact with the league? Because as the GM, you do a lot of interacting with the league office, and you can do that in any number of different ways, and it take any number of different approaches. All of that is determined by the owner, and then of course, as you mentioned before, the fiscal part of it is every bit of it is the owner's call, and he may or may not, depending on his point of view, may delegate you a number and say don't exceed this number, or he may say I want approval for every contract over X dollars, or as Mr. Wilson was in Buffalo, if he wanted to, he'd be involved in every negotiation. He wouldn't do the negotiation, I would, but he set the parameters and got the feedback after every negotiating session and things of that nature. So the owner essentially sets the agenda for the general manager, and then you have to translate that to the various parts of the football operation, in addition to acting as a co-worker with the people on the business side, because you do cross paths. The coach may not ever cross paths with the business side. The assistant coaches almost never do, but the GM almost always does, not almost always does. So you have to understand what their point of view is and try to make that work within the context of what the coach wants. You're the ambassador for the coach to the business side. Same with public relations. So you have to understand what the owner wants, and then you have to understand how to implement it within the concept of the entire organization. And today, it's a much tougher job than it was when I first became a GM in the year one, 1986. We had 50 employees in the building, excluding the players. I mean, you got 50 in some departments now. So it's a completely, you actually have to have a deputy who handles most of that grunt work for you. So the job but the job still entails a great deal of communication, a great deal of understanding about all facets of the business. And then you're always implementing the agenda the way the owner wants it implemented. His guidelines are your guidelines. And then the most important job of all is to be the go-between between implementing the owner's agenda and how the coach wants to carry that out. And right in the middle of that is the personnel function, because the personnel function by the very fact that it exists comes through the general manager's office, because he handles the implementation, if not negotiated, certainly the implementation of contracts. He manages the scouting staff. He manages the pro personnel staff. He manages the medical staff. All of those people, all of those things have to function really well in order to implement the coach's vision. And the coach may tell you, as an example, I want the outside linebackers in the 3-4 to be 6'4" and 275 pounds. First question the GM asks is, this is generic. It's not specific to any one team, but in a 3-4, let's say that's the only specific part of it. You would say, listen, God only makes so many of those every year. I'm quoting the late great George Young. We may not be able to find those guys. There aren't any in this year's draft. What are we going to do about it? you know, and so those conversations take place almost on a daily basis. And you have to be cognizant of the fact that in the end, the coach has to coach the team. The most mundane of tasks, which is always, with all due respect, overplayed by the media, who has the final say. With the 53, the coach always has the final say. You're always going to bend his way unless the owner feels otherwise. The owner has the final say. But as a GM, you have to be sure that you're giving the coach every chance to succeed. And even though you may feel player X is better than player Y that he wants, if he's firm about that, go ahead. You got 16 more weeks to rectify it if it's an incorrect decision. But here again, communication, and this is where Tom excels. He is, and he's worlds better than I was. Worlds better. He is a diplomat. He's really a great diplomat. And so the question you ask the coach when he says, I want those 6'4", 275-pound linebackers who run 4.5. Well, you know, you can ask that. You can deal with that in a number of different ways. Tom's very good at saying, listen, first of all, is this your really strong feeling, or is this the coordinator and the linebacker coach you're reflecting? And if the answer is no, it's my strong feeling, okay, let me take you through the board and show you how many of those guys are here because they aren't. What are we going to do about it? And so you got to be a problem solver, but you got to help him solve the problem too. So those are the things that happen on a daily basis for a general manager. And as I said, Tom's so diplomatic and so easy to get along with and so easy to work with while still being firm in his ideas that, you know, he's a joy to work.
We're talking to the great Boll Polian, a Mount Rushmore of professional football general managers. Mr. Polian, I have 3 quick questions that I've been told he's like you. I told you 10 minutes. We're at 10 minutes, but I didn't expect your answer to be as long. Can I ask them real quick? Do you mind?
Oh, sure, of course.
Okay, I just want to be respectful of my word and what I told you. Mr. Polian, Tom has been not cheap at all, but frugal, meaning if a player's worth 10, he's offered 10, but he's not going to go 10-5, and he's not going to try to go cheap at 9. He pays them what they're worth. And I was talking to a league executive at the NFL owners meeting who asked me, what have you noticed about Tom? And I brought that up. He said he got that from Bill. That's Bill. Bill would fight and say, we got to pay our guys what they're worth, but we don't have to overpay. Would you talk about that philosophy that you really taught Tom, please?
Well, you know, I didn't sit down and teach it to him. He got it by osmosis, and because very early on in the process, we recognized that he could handle that job and handle it well. So he was knee deep in it almost from the beginning. The reason you pay what a player is, there are 2 reasons to do that. Number one, financial chemistry. There's one thing that every player in the league knows, his salary. And the other thing he knows is the salary of everybody else in the locker room. So the thing you want to be sure of is that the players recognize that the organization is paying everyone fairly, not what the agent wants, maybe not even what the player wants, but fairly in with respect to his teammates and the contribution that he makes. So that, to me, that's the most important part. If you overpay somebody, you're taking it out of somebody else's pocket and giving it to the agent, in essence. And that doesn't make for good financial chemistry. And that's a real thing. Many times it goes unreported, but it's a real thing. And secondly, there is so much injury in our business. There's 100% injury rate. And there are so many unforeseen things that occur in a given year. Bill Parcells is fond of saying, when you come to work every day, 5 things happen that you didn't anticipate would happen. You have to deal with them. You always have to have some money in the bank, literally, to take care of emergencies. You can't go back to the owner for supplemental funding. He's not the Congress. So you always have to have a rainy day fund. And the way you build up that rainy day fund is to pay people exactly what you think they're worth. It's a negotiation, obviously. The agent, you're not always going to get your number. The agent's not always going to get his. But if it's within a fair range, then that puts a little money aside for a rainy day, which will inevitably come.
Next, Mr. Polian, you are lauded. I mean, 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks that you got for your organizations, Jim Kelly and Peyton Manning, 2 of the best. And you didn't miss. And you were very careful to understand, and this was what I was told at the NFL owners meetings, Bill understood you move up or you make a first-round quarterback draft and it's wrong, you're not employed for long. And he understood the understanding you can't risk first rounders. You got to either know or you don't pull the trigger. Tom, we don't know what he's going to do in the draft, but he has that reputation as well. He's very disciplined. He isn't going to reach. If he's not sold, he's not going to go do it. You are considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterback drafter from your chair. And will you talk about your mentality and I understand you're going to say osmosis, but what Tom learned from you via osmosis on that, please?
Well, he also learned from hearing it from Coach Levy, who's all of our mentor. He's the guy that created all of us. We're all products of Marv Levy. And Marv had 100 sayings, all of which I can recite, and I'm sure Tom can too, from memory. But one of the best ones was, if you don't know, you know. So if you don't have a conviction on a player, if he doesn't fit the exact parameters that you need in the first round, don't take the risk. Don't risk it. Coach Dungy later on expanded, again, Tom was around, and expanded on this. Tony was a great influence on all of us. When you're in the top 10, you should pick one of the following: a quarterback who can win. That means he's got everything going for him: height, weight, speed, arm strength, processing, etc. Checks every box. And don't compromise. Don't make excuses. Second, a guy that sacks the quarterback. Third, someone that scores touchdowns, running backs, wide receivers. Fourth, someone who turns the ball over, either as a linebacker or, more importantly, in the secondary with great ball skills. Finally, a left tackle. And you probably, in this day and age, can include right tackle. You just call it tackle because they're so hard to come by. If none of those are there, trade out. That's the Dungy dictum. And so and it matches exactly with Marv's point of view. Those are the kind of people we look for. Every player should have what Coach Levy called football temperament, others call character. He's got to have the right makeup. Everybody, top to bottom. But in terms of premier positions and certainly first round draft picks, you're looking for a guy who checks every box. And if he doesn't, if you don't know, then you know.
We are talking to one of the greatest general managers in pro football history. He also happened to be the mentor to Raiders general manager Tom Telesco. Last question, and it's something that I met you years ago covering college before I moved to the NFL. But one of the things, Mr. Polian, everyone has always talked about with you is the people you surround yourself with. That you have great football minds, but people of integrity. And everyone I talked to when Tom got the job is like, listen, people who aren't people of integrity aren't going to hang out, aren't going to make it around Tom. It's just he wants smart football people who are good people. And they go, he got that from Bill because you got to work with these people. You're with these people almost more than your own family. Can you talk about, please, what how that came about with you and why that's so important.
Well, it came about because of Coach Levy. Coach Levy taught me that. You want people around you, A, who are smart, B, who can make you smarter. I know for a fact that I wasn't very smart, so I needed smart people around me. Coach Levy was plenty smart enough, but I'm not in that league. So uh, that's one thing. Secondly, you want people who you trust. And again, I'll go back to Coach Dungy here. Trust is the glue that holds us all together. If we trust one another because we can rely on their word, we can rely on what they tell us, we can rely on how they're going to act, we can rely on how they react with other people in the building, then we can accomplish anything. Because if we trust one another, there's no issue. I don't have any. If you tell me this interview is going to last X time, then fine. I know that you mean that. And if we extend it, that's great. But the bottom line is, I know that you mean that. And so that's it in a nutshell. And in order for you to trust a coworker, they have to be honest. They have to be straightforward. They have to have a great work ethic. They have to care about the team. It's really that simple.
Tom Telesco's done everything right, ladies and gentlemen, since he joined the Raiders. And a lot of the credit goes to this man right here, a living NFL legend, his mentor, the great Bill Polian. Thank you for joining us.